Good day to all our friends around the world, and welcome to those that are here for the first time. Join us for another fascinating story being told by the Crime Unfiltered team. Please click on the subscribe button to symbolize your commitment to the fight against all forms of crime and to choose to stand in solidarity against today's subject matter: who kills an 8-month pregnant woman? Statistics indicate that South Africa has 5 times the global average in regard to violence against women and children. Women are getting killed every day, and majority don't get the justice they deserve. Every 3 hours a woman is killed in South Africa. The worst of the cases are the partner killings. The same man who is supposed to protect you turns around and murders you. The gruesome murder of Tshegofatso Pule on June 4, 2020 sent shockwaves across the country and made international headlines. In a time when people were supposed to be sheltering in place with their families due to the global pandemic, there was a noted increase in gender-based violence around the world, and one such incident led to the gruesome and senseless killing of Tshegofatso at the hands of her partner. Today's tragic story being told is that of Tshegofatso Pule. We will cover her background, how she met her killer, the relationship breakdown, murder plots, and the verdict of the perpetrators.
The National Coronavirus Command Council has decided to enforce a nationwide lockdown.
Tshegofatso Pule was born on the 10th of May in 1992 to a couple who unfortunately died 4 years apart approximately 13 years ago. Leaving their 4 orphaned children, Tshegofatso, who was the firstborn, her 1 sister and 2 brothers to their extended family to raise. Her aunt took them in, and she raised them like her own. Tsheho blossomed into a beautiful young lady who had a zest for life and big dreams of being involved in the fashion industry, with a special focus on makeup and planned to own her own brand one day. As a means of realizing her dream in the beauty and fashion industry, she started out by working for very well-known fashion brands in South Africa, namely Edgar's and then MAC Cosmetics, where she learnt a lot about makeup use, marketing, and she dreamed of being her own boss one day. In an interview with local media after the tragedy, her family members described her as a very private person who would rarely complain or ask for help. She would insist on smiling through her pain, an observation they would later regret to have not intervened more into her affairs. According to Shoba's testimony in court, they met in June 2018. They met at a nightclub during a gathering for a friend's celebration. It is believed that as soon as they met, Shoba laid the ground rules for Tsheho to accept being in a love triangle and that he had intentions of marrying his girlfriend Rosetta Moachi, and ironically that was the same year Shoba and his family approached Rosetta's family to discuss the marriage proposal. However, his philandering ways clearly had not stopped with his proposal to the woman he had officially dated since 2013. Ntuthuko Shoba was born in 1989 and was 33 years old at the time of his arrest. He was a well-educated man and he worked for the Johannesburg Stock Exchange as an analyst. He is known to have spent most of his free time drinking and womanizing, and as a result wasn't known for having a high moral standard. He carried on with many other women despite having a long-term relationship that had progressed with an accepted marriage proposal. By January 2019, Tsheho found out that she was pregnant, and with this pregnancy it was claimed by Shoba in court that they jointly agreed to terminate it. Unfortunately for Tsheho's family in court is where they learnt of the first terminated pregnancy. Despite this unfortunate event and lack of commitment on Shoba's part from the start of the relationship, Tsheho continued to date him. At 28 years old, her family were expecting that she would be in a relationship. However, what was peculiar was Shoba's refusal to meet them even on an informal basis, just so the Pule family knew whom their daughter was dating. His modus operandi while dating Tsheho was that when he approached her home to pick her up, he would either flash his lights or toot his horn and slide back in his seat so no one could actually see his face clearly if they walked past his car. Very few people met him, and it was under forceful circumstances that he was seen and that he was met with reluctant greetings. All of Tsheho's friends and family expressed concern about his secrecy and his intentions for her, but in usual Tsheho form, she ignored their advice of caution and were not successful in dissuading her from continuing to see this man who clearly was not proud of her and their relationship that he preferred to keep in the shadows. Shoba had gone ahead to start marriage proceedings with Rosetta's family. However, in January of 2020, her mother died from a long battle with cancer, and this put a pause on the discussion of the nuptials. During this difficult time for Shoba's fiancé, approximately 9 months after the previous termination, Tshegofatso was pregnant again in October/November of 2019. This time round, she informed Shoba in January of 2020, when she was approximately 3 months pregnant. He did not hide his displeasure, and it appears from the WhatsApp messages exchanged between the two that he had indicated his preference had to terminate again. He saw this pregnancy as an obstacle between him and the life insurance payout Rosetta stood to receive. This was met with a very strong stance from Tsheho, who vehemently refused to terminate the pregnancy. In protest, he wasn't available for most of the prenatal appointments and gave very little financial support as she had lost her job in the lockdown. This made her pregnancy very difficult to navigate without his willful financial support. Judging from the conversations from the WhatsApp communication, their relationship was quite volatile. Close friends and family would later state that Tsheho had accepted that she would be a single parent, but she always held out hope that Shoba would come around once the baby was born. This speaks to how optimistic and naive she was to his capacity to be cruel and evil. She misplaced her trust in him and gave him the benefit of the doubt that somewhere deep down he loved her and Kamano. Now we know that that couldn't have been further from the truth. Her family and friends were supportive of her pregnancy and soon started having discussions about what she needed in terms of financial support and started purchasing items for the baby who she had named Kamano. The family even had a baby shower planned for the 27th of June 2020, which was never meant to be. In hindsight, we can now assume the plot to kill Tsheho started in early May of 2020. Tsheho started receiving anonymous text messages with obscenities being communicated to her. We will take a deep dive into the contents of this communication in this episode when we cover the court proceedings. She blocked this number and informed her friends and family about these unpleasant text messages. At this point, everyone assumed the messages were coming from Shoba's fiancée, Rosetta. We can now speculate that it was all Shoba's works given what we now know he is capable of. Shoba could now feel the walls closing in on him as the expected date of delivery of Kamano was fast approaching. He reached out to an old schoolmate whom he knew was into illegal businesses which included armed robberies of homes and carjacking. They met and discussed his dilemma of having a pregnant side chick who doesn't want to terminate the pregnancy, while he intends to marry his trust fund girlfriend of 7 years. After 2 low offers of 7,000 and then 20,000 rands, Shoba finally offered the accepted 70,000 rand to help him find someone to kill Tsheho. From being the agent to recruit a killer for Shoba, he decided to assume the contract to kill himself. The first piece of the puzzle that was laid on the table in mid-May 2020, Tsheho received a job offer via text message. This job was attractive as it right up her alley, which involved teaching people how to use and apply makeup online, and she would be working from home. The interview arrangement was strange, having to meet face-to-face, and there would be a grey Jeep waiting to transport her at a non-operating McDonald's near Gold Reef City to take her to meet her new employer. The offer sounded too good to be true, and that was the opinion of all her friends, and they all discouraged her from pursuing the offer. All this was being arranged when South Africa, just like any other country, was in a strict lockdown and everything was closed. The McDonald's they were meant to meet at was closed. There was restricted movement only for essential travel, and this meeting wouldn't qualify for that. Tsheho was made to realize that as an 8-month pregnant woman, in the dead of winter in a COVID lockdown, she was dissuaded from attending this suspicious interview. We would later learn that this was the first attempt on her life, and this bogus interview was meant to be on the 29th of May 2020. The plan hatched by Shoba with his hired killer was for her to be abducted from this McDonald's location and hanged to death at the Marysburg Bridge, which is located on a busy highway. This would appear to be because of the unsurmountable hate that he had for the mother of his child. Not only did he want to kill an 8-month pregnant woman, but there also had to be a shock factor effect to this whole evil deed. Muzikayise had been to the bridge to scout the area where Tsheho was to be hung, and he immediately got back to Shoba to say that it was too busy and would not be private enough for him to carry out the egregious task. There was another suggestion from the mastermind to kill Tsheho and dump her by a local stream so she could be found by someone. The main theme for Tshego's death, as was planned by Shoba, was for her to meet a very painful death and for her body to be denigrated by being displayed for all to see. Shoba's motive was the money that was expected from the life insurance payout coming to his fiancé post, her mother dying from cancer, earlier in 2020. It was the easy access to his fiancé's money that Shoba promised Muzikayise he would pay the promised 70,000 rands for the services rendered to secure his marriage to his trust fund wife-to-be. There was a lot of communication throughout the month of May and early June between Shoba and Muzikayise Malephane as they worked on a killer strategy to end Tshego and baby Kamano's life. The final plan up Shoba's sleeve was that he would trick Tshego into inviting her to his home to, as he put it, discuss the shopping list for Kamano. In the meantime, earlier on the 4th of June 2020, Shoba had been to Muzikayise's home to confirm the plan for the evening and to make sure everything goes without a hitch. The contract killer went on a drinking spree to calm his nerves and perhaps to numb his conscience, as it appeared to finally dawn on him that he was about to end 2 lives. According to his court testimony, he was only used to petty theft and not murder. As a result, was completely unprepared for what he was going to do. Shoba didn't know that his hired help was a bundle of nerves, and this contributed greatly to the failure of their gruesome plan. When asked in court why he accepted to perform the hit himself, he stated it was purely because of greed, selfishness, and the love of money which he deeply regrets today. Tshego was met by her aunt at their gate at approximately 4 p.m. as she was exiting to leave in Shoba's car for their meeting. She told her aunt not to lock the house door or the gate as she would be back by 10 p.m. in the evening. This was the last time anyone in her family would ever see Tshego alive. From cell phone tracking performed by the prosecution, it was concluded that she got to Shoba's house at around 6 p.m. and then at 9 p.m. she received a call from one of her cousins, and Tshego confirmed that she was indeed at Shoba's house, and she could hear him in the background, and so she proceeded to greet him. She stated to her that she would be leaving his house soon. That would be the last time anyone in her family spoke to Tshego. Tshego is captured on CCTV at the premises of Shoba's house exiting the gate to enter into the Uber that Shoba had arranged, which in fact was Muzikayise taking her away to her death. All this is confirmed by mobile phone tracking, as Shoba denied this throughout the court case till the verdict was handed down. In the video, it is clear that Tshego had some hesitation, which is confirmed by Muzikayise as she could see that he was drunk and she could smell the alcohol in his car. Shoba made sure he performed for his CCTV cameras by appearing not to speak and stood at a distance from the car. He insisted that Tshego had made her own arrangements herself and that she appeared to know the driver, which was proven to be false. Once in the car with Muzikayise, Tshego noticed that he was going past the road that leads to her home. She brought this to his attention, and he immediately apologized and asked if it was okay for him to go and pick up a parcel, and he promised to bring her straight back home. She accepted, and Muzikayise proceeded to take her to the location where he got her out of the car, and she sustained a fatal gunshot wound to the chest. In the killer's confession, he stated that he proceeded to put her lifeless body back in the car and drove to a veld in Durban Deep, and this is where he would hung her as instructed by the mastermind. At this point, he was overwhelmed and traumatized with what he had done and failed to hang her fully and left her in a kneeling position. He forgot to take her phone from her as instructed by Shoba. This was in an effort to prevent the police from finding Tshego's correspondence with Shoba. That evening, Tshego's aunt did not sleep a wink as she was so worried about Tshego's whereabouts being out at night, heavily pregnant young lady with a known unsupportive partner who denied knowing where she went after getting into the jeep that was meant to bring her home. Members of Tshego's family and friends took turns from the 4th, 5th and 6th of June to try and speak to her on her phone, and it remained unanswered until it went off. In the meantime, Shoba denied knowing where she could be after she left his home on the cold night of the 4th of June 2020. Tshego's family never received any follow-up call from Shoba, and did not even in the least appear worried about his baby, as she could have delivered anywhere and could be in danger. Shoba kept saying that Tshego had arranged her own Uber, even if the court later proved there were no such calls from Tshego's phone to anyone for a taxi to be booked. He denied being able to describe the driver because he was wearing a cap and mask. On the 6th of June, Shoba, met her cousin at the police station after she had summoned him and was present when she was filling a missing persons report. On the same day, Shoba ran into Muzikayise and his friend at a petrol station in the car park. They greeted and Shoba assured the killer that he would pay him very soon. The neighborhood watch group that had found Seho's lifeless body on the 5th of June took pictures, some of them unfortunately insensitive, and they went viral. It was through these photos and videos of an unidentified pregnant woman found hanging from a tree that were taken by passers-by, is how her immediate family got to establish what had happened to her on the Sunday 8th of June 2020, 4 days after her murder. They had to go to the morgue to identify her, and it was gut-wrenching, and the image of Seho's traumatized body will remain engraved in their minds. Her murder sparked nationwide outrage as the people lamented the increasing cases of gender-based violence. On the 11th of June, Seho and Kamano were laid to rest. The funeral was held at her aunt's home in Soweto Meadowlands. The family was joined by friends, neighbors, and government officials at the funeral. The heartbroken family said they wanted to dedicate the day of her funeral not only to bid her farewell, but to also call for the end to gender-based violence. In the meantime, Shoba took a step that he thought would exonerate him and probably exempt him from paying the money he owed the killer if he is behind bars. Shoba led the police to access the CCTV footage to confirm the make, model, and registration number of the Jeep so it could be traced. Once the car was identified as Muzikayise's girlfriend's car, using the car tracking system installed in the car, the killer was swiftly apprehended by Highway Patrol, who were on the lookout for his vehicle on the 15th of June 2020, 11 days after her murder. He appeared in court and was charged with Tshegofatso Pule's murder. Once arrested, he admitted to going to Mpumalanga to sell the murder weapon so it wouldn't be found in his possession.
Killer turned state witness Muzikayise Malephane says he didn't have the nerve to hang Tshegofatso Pule alive, and that's why he shot her first. For the first time, the court has heard the grim details around Pule's last moments alive. She was found hanging from a tree in Roodepoort in June 2020. Ntuthuko Shoba is on trial for allegedly ordering the hit on his heavily pregnant girlfriend.
After spending approximately 7 months in remand, Muzikayise changed his plea to guilty in January 2021, where he admitted to killing Miss Pule after being offered 70,000 rands and that Shoba had not paid him by the time he was arrested. He became a state witness and was sentenced to 20 years in prison in a pre-deal for the killer to deliver the mastermind of this whole ordeal to the prosecution.
The accused did not think clearly and still had it in his mind to hang her and to make it seem that she committed suicide, although it did not make sense. The accused dragged Miss Pule out of the Jeep, tied the rope around the neck, and put her on the tree. The accused then left and drove around. The accused admits that he shot Miss Pule and caused her death. The accused admits that his actions were unlawful. The accused admits that despite having consumed alcohol, he was in his sound and sober senses and fully appreciated the wrongfulness and unlawfulness of his actions. The accused thus admits that he is guilty of murder by Taoist directors.
Persuaded this court to impose not the prescribed sentence of life imprisonment because of this substantial and compelling circumstances, but to deviate from that sentence. And consequently then, as I've said, you're sentenced to 20 years in respect of the murder. You're sentenced to a term of imprisonment of 5 years, direct imprisonment on each of the counts 2, 3, and 4, served concurrently with the 20 years direct imprisonment, which is what you will serve.
At the end of the day, like I said, as a family, we wanted closure. We wanted to find out exactly what led to Tshegofatso's death. And our suspicions today were confirmed.
So a rope was tied up there. Then she was just hanging here. So I think whoever that did that failed to lift her up, to take her up, because we found her hanging. Her waist was up though. We are one of the people that saw Tshegofatso hanging on a tree. So after that, I personally, I couldn't sleep for days. So I became connected to this case.
Muzikayise told the court that he knew Shoba from high school and therefore were old acquaintances. He revealed the chilling plan that Shoba had to kill his lover. Muzikayise said he was first contracted by Shoba on 29th of May 2020 to kill Pule after trying to lure her to a fake interview at McDonald's near Gold Reef City, but as we all know, Tsheho didn't show up. Tsheho's cousin Palisa Senokwane, who made the known last call to the deceased, also testified against Shoba, saying he was the last known person to be in contact with Miss Pule before she went missing.
Seeing Shoba today.
And like I'm speechless. In fact, I'm out of words because this guy is lent on to me and to travel.
We get to court. Emotions are high.
According to Muzikayise's testimony, Ntuthuko Shoba is the mastermind in Tshegofatso Pule's murder. Shoba was arrested in January 2021 and charged with 1 count of murder, alternatively conspiracy to commit murder, and a count of defeating the ends of justice. Shoba applied for bail twice and was declined by the court, and he changed lawyer twice further, delaying his court case while behind bars. Ntuthuko Shoba's trial started on the 24th of January 2022 at the High Court, and he pleaded not guilty to all the charges. We have excerpts of video footage from the Newsroom Africa produced documentary covering the case of Miss Pule's murder and was presented by Linda Munisi. The IT consultant testified in court over the 23 calls made from Shoba's office phone that were traced to the killer Muzikayise Malephane on the day of the murder, and Shoba denied making these calls. The 2-star witnesses for the prosecution, whose faces had to be shielded as per the court order, were Tsheho's friend Sepiso Tsita and her cousin Palisa Senokwane. Their testimony fully corroborated the hired killer, who had since gotten a plea deal of 20 years in prison for testifying against Shoba. Please pause your screen so you can read and follow the dialogue, as it is not in English and might be spoken too fast to follow the subtitles.
All black. She had this big black summer hat, and she was wearing glasses, sunglasses. The black t-shirt that she wore had Tshegofatso Pule's face on it.
She was getting threats that Tshegofatso must leave her man.
These are the messages said to be coming from 2 different women.
Then she said that she is HIV positive and Tshegofatso must go get tested. And yeah, she said that, and then Tshegofatso blocked the number. What I saw, the SMS was from a lady named Zandile or Zanele, and she was asking if Tshegofatso is looking for a job. It's a makeup job, basically. What she would need to do is teach people how to do the makeup, home tutorials, but she'll be working from home because it was locked. She asked Tshegofatso to confirm if she's interested again so she can send the interview details. Tshegofatso then replied and said, confirmed. Then Zandi Zanele sent the message scheduling an interview for 11 to 12 at McDonald's Omonde, the south of Johannesburg. But she would need to be there 2 hours before.
His guilty plea last year, Malephane told the court that he was instructed by Ntuthuko Shoba to pick up Pule from a McDonald's outlet on the 29th of May and take her to his flat. But she did not pitch. He said Shoba had arranged an employment interview with a certain lady.
Could you establish as to where she was physically? At which place was she?
And then I'm go Shoba, go Westlake, go Florida.
During this conversation, except her, did you manage perhaps to speak to anybody else who was also present with her on the other side?
Shoba na le background. And then abang tumedisa bikrai utumedisa Shoba.
After this phone call, did you ever speak to her again? Now, on the Friday, that is the 5th of June, 2020, man. Did you at any stage try to call her on that specific day?
On
the Saturday, that is now the 6th of June. Did you manage to have contact with her on that day, man?
And then the third time I phone
on the 5th and the 6th, did you at any stage get any phone call from Mr. Shoba inquiring about Ms. Pule's whereabouts? On the 5th and the 6th, did you at any stage come there and physically come to the place to inquire as to the whereabouts of Ms. Pule? Did you manage to call him again, man?
Shoba, I hope I'm playing maga. The guy go Florida, go police station, case.
Newsroom Africa reached out to the JSE after we heard that he had used his work phone to communicate with the killer.
In a Newsroom Africa exclusive, the JSE fires the alleged mastermind in the Tshegofatso Pule murder case, Ntuthuko Shoba.
I want to take you back to yesterday when that issue was mentioned by the state. Take a listen.
4.4, a statement was obtained from personnel from JSE as per A47. Such statement confirmed that on 26 May 2020, a call was remotely made by the applicant from JSE landline and connected to a certain mobile phone. I was able to establish that the said mobile phone connected to JSE was not registered in the applicant's name, and it was used to contact Mr. Malephane several times between the period of 20 May 2020 and 14 June 2020.
In fact, on the day of her murder, you guys communicated about 23 times. So how could you have not known the killer?
He denied knowing Malephane, saying that the only time that he got to know of him was during the hard lockdown, where Malephane sold illicit alcohol and cigarettes.
He spent the entire time in prison trying to fight to go out on bail, at least for his freedom, while the trial was pending. And then fast forward to the beginning of the trial. But it was postponed because now he had new lawyers.
Once the Tseho's family had watched the CCTV footage in court and witnessed how Shoba led their daughter to her death, it left them extremely emotional, to say the least.
But it's okay. That's Kulungi. The day will come. Don't care whether we are winning at least or not. But the day will come. Never lie. Never.
You were in court this morning. You have on many occasions come to court to support the family. How are you feeling in terms of the possibility of Shoba possibly not getting a life imprisonment sentence?
Look, I think it's important for us to talk about the fact that this is not only a case here, Shoba. This is a case against GBV. This is a case that can free women that are not even born today. Because this case, when all of us are gone, will be referred to as a case that will either free another perpetrator of GBV and see someone go home or go behind bars. So this case is deeper than all our intelligence now. It's timeless. So we need to treat it like that. So when the judge gives judgment tomorrow, it's not an easy judgment, because it's a judgment that time will always refer to. So for me, when we speak of GBV, we're speaking about a monster that lives amongst our communities that is faceless. Every day, women go through GBV, every single day. So when we address GBV, it's important for us to set the tone with the cases that are immediate around us. Our support is literally saying to the judge, there is a public outcry, because when I'm here, I'm here for two reasons. Personal reasons, because Tshegofatso Pule, how we grew up qualificationing, I can go sleep there tonight. I'm here because Soweto is saying that, President, you must go there. The whole of Soweto, when you speak of Soweto, you speak of millions of people. Bonkgono can't be here, but I must be here for Bonkgono. So when I'm here, I'm representing millions of people, and that shows the judge already that there's a serious public outcry, public concern, and when he does pass judgment, he must pass judgment understanding that young kids are watching, young boys are watching. Is it okay to kill and rape and do anything that is GBV related? Can we get away with it? So this case is not an easy case. It's not about this one person or the second person being the baby. It's actually about all of us. It's about me being conditioned through the systems that GBV is not acceptable. Because if he goes home, I might just be conditioned without even realizing that it's actually okay to abuse women and even kill women. Morning. Thank you.
Wails and weeping could be heard before family and friends lit candles at the foot of the tree where Tshegofatso Pule was discovered last year.
I wonder whether this is a totally closure. You know, coming here.
This tree told the story and the horror that Tshegofatso went through. This tree refused to keep quiet. The leaves that we walked upon rustled and refused to keep quiet. Why are men in South Africa quiet? This tree refused to keep quiet. This tree refused to close its eyes. This tree worked like a camera and took pictures of the last moments of Tshegofatso. Now I'm asking myself, as a man who's a friend of the perpetrators, both of them, why are we quiet? Why Ritutsi, if really Chomi, Shoba, why are we quiet? Why have we not come up and say it is our friend who did this, that which has put shame to South Africa, that which has put a lot of hate in the hearts and minds of Tshegofatso's family? Change. Change, my brothers. Change. The laws are not going to do that, because the law is never there when it is never there. No right-thinking man should do what Shoba did. And we must not be afraid to call him by names. Shoba. We must call him, they must know him. There is no point in knowing so much about Tshegofatso while the killer still lives. Yes. We must know him. His name must be engraved in the bleeding hearts of every South African. Yes. He must become an example of what not to be as a man. Yes.
Mr. Shoba, can you stand up, please? For these reasons, Mr. Shoba, I've reached the following verdicts. On count 1 of the indictment, I found you guilty of the premeditated murder of Tshegofatso Pule. On count 2 of the indictment, I find you not guilty of obstructing justice. You may sit down. I hand down the judgment.
And for them, it was emotional. It was, you know, that moment where they finally got what they've been calling for.
The emotions that come with it are the ones that are difficult to process, because it evokes the memories, it evokes the very moments when Tshegofatso was found hanging.
Has been sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Tshegofatso Pule. Shoba was convicted of being the mastermind behind Pule's murder in 2020. Her body was found hanging from a tree in Roodepoort's Durban Deep. For more on this, I'm joined now by reporter Linda Mnisi, who was in court this morning. Linda, there was celebration in some parts of the courtroom. However, when you focused a little bit on the uncle who speaks for the family, he, of course, was hanging his head in between his hands. He says there's a sigh of relief, but also, I suppose, as a way of saying, I've been carrying this on my shoulders for a while. It's time now to heal.
Absolutely, Thabo. I mean, this marks the end of a 2-year journey for the Pule family. You'll remember they've gone from discovering Tshegofatso Pule's body from a tree, going to the arrest of Muzikayise Malephane, a plea deal being entered to, and ultimately the sentencing of Muzikayise Malephane, who was sentenced to 20 years. Thereafter, the arrest of Ntuthuko Shoba, the mastermind in the matter, who happened to be the father of this unborn child. So it's really been a tough 2 years for them, but they're quite glad that, justice finally was served. They say that they consider themselves amongst the lucky families who get to taste and see justice. But you'll remember that yesterday in Ntuthuko Shoba, the mastermind was pleading for mercy from the court, asking the court to deviate from the prescribed minimum sentence of life because he was found guilty for the premeditated murder of Tshegofatso. But today, during sentence, the judge, having looked at the mitigating and aggravating factors, saying that, in fact, among some of the aggravating factors was the fact that Tshegofatso relied heavily on Ntuthuko Shoba.
It evokes the very memories when we saw her lying in the morgue, having to identify her. It evokes the memories of having lost not only Tshegofatso, even the child that she was expecting.
I've got mixed feelings. That justice has been served. But at the very same time, today as the Mashiane family, as the Pule family, will be having Ntuthuko and her baby command. I wish Ntuthuko Shoba just said, I don't want you and the baby. Today, yes, we are happy that he is going to be changed. But unfortunately, our Tshegofatso and our baby Kamani, they are gone and gone forever. Yeah, but we'd like to say to all South Africans, we thank you for your support. We know that we've been getting prayers all over, and we know that South Africans are with us. And we say to the judicial system of this country, Viva, we are sick and tired of gender-based violence. We are sick and tired. This justice come to stop. Thank you.
Foundation. We're here this morning, this afternoon. It's been quite an emotional day for you, for the family. I saw you crying, as we came out of court, tears of joy, of happiness. Just tell us how we're feeling before we get to what we've seen take place here on the streets.
I think the most beautiful words today that I ever heard were, for the rest of your natural life. Nothing can ever change after that. Nothing can ever change. This is such a huge victory for the foundation, for South Africa, for a whole lot of other lives who never even got the day of justice, who never even got to see the day in court. So for us, this is just a huge moment. And also, this is the very first case that we got to take on. And the very first case that has come full circle as well. It has come full circle. We started with it, and it has come full circle. It has now reached its end, and this has just set an absolute great tone for all the other cases that we're busy with, and all the other cases that we're still going to handle going forward.
Do you feel
Shoba's greed, selfishness and narcissism was the cause of his downfall. Driven by insurmountable hate, he and his amateur contract killer made a calamity of mistakes that led him to serve himself on a platter to the prosecution to be fried at the stake, guaranteeing his conviction. Tshegofatso's murder still reminds citizens of the rot in society and the need for men to be educated on how to care for women like their mothers, daughters, or sisters. Justice for Tsheho has been achieved, but the family and friends are a long way from healing the scars caused by her demise.